Good evening, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started this evening. Want to welcome everybody to the first ever College Athletics Information Night hosted by the Nashua Athletic Department. Hopefully you will find the information this evening insightful and helpful as you look to compete at the next level. We will start with introductions. I am Lisa Gingras. I'm the athletic director here in the Nashua School District. I oversee athletics at both North and South as well as the middle schools. Sort of co-hosting with me as well as providing some insight from his experience is Mr. Dennis Hamilton, who is an assistant principal at Nashua South as well as a former Division I college coach. Our panelists this evening most of the evening will be them, is to the far left here is Jerry Holland, very well known here in the Nashua School District. He is our head athletic trainer for more than 30 years, so he's dealt with thousands of athletes from that perspective. He's also the physical therapist and owner of Performance Rehab. He also offers a very unique parent perspective, as he has not only put 4 children through college, he has put 4 college athletes through college at both the Division I and Division II level. So that's Jerry Holland. Next to Jerry is Mr. Jeff Giuliano. Mr. Giuliano is the assistant men's ice hockey coach at the University of New Hampshire. He is also a native of Nashua, which we thought it was a really great opportunity for Jeff to come back to Nashua, his hometown. Jeff played ice hockey for Boston College, where he won a national championship and served as captain in his senior year. Jeff then went on to play 13 years of professional ice hockey, which included playing for the Los Angeles Kings. He then spent 3 years as an assistant coach of the Manchester Monarchs, and Jeff is also a New Hampshire Legends Hockey Hall of Famer. Next to Jeff is Mr. Lance Bisson. Lance is also a native of Nashua and a graduate of Nashua North. He is the head men's basketball coach as well as head cross country for men and women at Rivier University. Lance played 4 years at Rivier, winning a great Northeast Atlantic Conference championship and playing in an NCAA appearance in his second year. Lance is a member of the New England Basketball Hall of Fame. Next to Lance is Mr. Paul Hogan. Paul is the athletic director and head men's basketball coach at the New Hampshire Technical Institute in Concord. Paul's a New Hampshire native and Plymouth State graduate. He coached basketball for 8 seasons at Plymouth State and has been recognized twice as the United States College Athletic Association National Coach of the Year. Paul's a member of the Plymouth State Hall of Fame and has received many other awards, honors, and recognitions. And last but not least is Mrs. Jeanette McKillop. She is the Associate Athletic Director of Compliance and Senior Women Administrator at Franklin Pierce University. She was previously the head women's basketball coach for 3 seasons, and prior to coming to New Hampshire, Jen spent 10 years as an assistant coach at 3 different Division I schools, including the College of William and Mary and Sacred Heart University. So thank you all for being here this evening, and we're hoping their insight will help everybody. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Dennis Hamilton. Let's talk about the agenda first. So we'll talk a little bit about the Eligibility Center, which is really important for any NCAA schools. We'll talk about the important information that you can find in the Guide for College-Bound Student Athletes. Then we are going to turn it over to our 5 panelists who will provide information to you about Division I, II, III, the community college level, as well as the parent perspective, and then we are going to open it up for questions. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Hamilton, who will talk about the Eligibility Center. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you. For me, the crazy thing about the NCAA rule book, it's about the size of a telephone book. And if you ever read the rules, you'll notice that most of the rules are written to prevent or in response to something that has already occurred. For example, as a coach, I coached at UNH for 9 years throughout the 90s, that swimming and diving. that I couldn't drive a student home from practice, or I wasn't supposed to drive a student home from practice, because once upon a time, somebody thought providing transportation meant you could buy the student a car, or promise them a car to come and play. So everybody in the world, they wrote a rule at the NCAA level, and so we're subject to a lot of those things. My advice for everyone who wants to play sports in college is to choose your college first. Keep in mind your academics, your academic interests, and prioritize your future goals. Find a college that's right for you. I always ask a potential recruit at UNH, where is UNH on your list of schools? And I really wanted, not wanted to hear, I'd like to find a good match and to think that UNH was your first choice. Back in the day, in the 90s, before so much electronics was involved, I had a pile of questionnaires. It was paper questionnaires. We cut and paste little wildcats and taped them to the questionnaires so they looked good. And I would rank those questionnaires. I would rank them partially by what your priority was, where you wanted to go to college, and hopefully at that time you would say UNH. Your academics, because we never wanted to recruit somebody who would not do well on our team. So to be on our team, we really wanted you to be able to get into UNH on your own. And we wanted you to be a very strong student. It's extremely demanding and very, very important. A tough question and tough things that we deal with at any level, but particularly when it comes to scholarships, is injury. And we didn't want to enter into a contract with someone who had a pre-existing injury, and that was really important. And lastly, I would make judgments on how you can contribute to the team and how you can help us be better. Every single questionnaire that I got back from a student's coach that wanted to come to UNH often said, this is the greatest person I ever coached, the greatest student on the team in my program ever. And I really, really thought that was great. I got to coach every greatest person from, all these different teams. It was really actually important because you have to be really tough to survive what I put you through. It's not easy. My evaluation sources to judge whether or not you were, how you could contribute were basically most reliable as I would see for myself. I was a junior Olympic judge for diving, so I would go to these events and see, pick the students who I thought, or the prospective athletes who I thought would be best in summer camps. But more than anything, it was relationships I had and trusted with coaches. So if you know somebody who knows somebody, I would trust the evaluation of someone I valued. I never, honestly, there was no website or recruiting consultant or no professional highlight video, online recruiting situation that ever influenced my decisions, but it can provide a blanket sort of exposure for you. So there is some merit. The favorite recruiting video that I ever received from an athlete was an unedited practice of a really, really strong athlete, and it highlighted fundamentals. Fundamentals is something that I really, really missed as a college coach and really emphasized later on when I became a high school coach. And finally, one thing that was really important, and one way that you could not even be in my pile of recruits, if you're not registered with the NCAA Eligibility Center, you weren't in my pile at all. So the NCAA Registration Center is something that's very, very important, particularly for Division I or II. I was a Division III athlete at Tufts University, and I will let you know now that there are Division III schools that look at the profile accounts and will direct you to go through that process to put yourself out there on the Eligibility Center site as well. It's a great place to start. As I did a little bit of research recently, because it's very different now than when I was coaching, I found that the help tab, on the Eligibility Center was something that was, I guess, the most informative for me as someone who had, we used to work with the clearinghouse. I'll say a few, let's see here. We talk about divisions, and I mentioned it being a Division III athlete. One thing about Division III, it's kind of the idea of pure amateurism in that there's no scholarships. A lot of Division III schools operate. They can offer incentives, or our coaches' teams have ways of offering incentives in terms of other types of financial scholarships, whether it's academic-based or otherwise. They don't. Not supposed to say that. Sometimes there is some influence with admissions. Like I said, at UNH, as a swimming and diving coach, did not exercise influence with admissions because there were so many highly qualified students, and to work with somebody who wasn't academically qualified was really, really a difficult thing for a college team. In Division I, there are 16 core classes. There's a GPA that you need to be eligible. You really need to work with your school counselor and be organized with your transcripts. Send them to the NCAA, and they go through the Eligibility Center. It's a whole website-based process that's, like I said, is clearly explained through the Help Center. Division II, there's a similar number of core classes, but you're not, they're not as, I guess, structured. One thing that's really, really important as a high school student, and you can work through the Eligibility Center site. Also, you can work with your school counselor, but you want to be able to access the list of approved classes. We do have like a lot of senior electives in Nashua, and you'll want to know if you're going to take a fourth-year English elective that course has been approved and on the list for the NCAA, particularly if you're looking at Division I or II, and if you're a candidate for a scholarship. One thing, let's see. So creating the profile can be important no matter what division you're looking at, and it can actually help inform creating your account or certificate account with the eligibility for Division I and II. Division III profile, I understand some of the schools use that as well in Division III, but it's not as much of a requirement. But it's actually a great exercise to do and will be very helpful for you. The process for watching your courses can start freshman year and move forward from there. Overall, and in closing, I do want to say that if you are a dedicated, hardworking athlete, if you love to play your sport, there probably is a place for you. I want to say, put your name out there, contact coaches, let them know who you are. Be honest. I firmly believe that the athletic field is an extension to the classroom that is as true in college as it is in high school. And your life experience through competition will take you a very, very long way in terms of your growth. It's a very safe place to learn and grow in life with some of the challenges, some of the losses, and also with the victories and how to be a great winner and how to handle loss. I also really believe that the structure and the support that you can receive from being on a team is unbelievable, particularly as you move into the college level. So no matter who you are, if you're an athlete who loves your sport, and we all want to hear and see really dedicated, hardworking people, it's a requirement, then please reach out to coaches in college and use your resources here to do that at any level. I don't have a lot of experience with all the various associations and conferences, but like I said, there is a place for you to play. As a swim coach at Nashua North, I was the very first swim coach, and I coached for a long, long time. I did find that if there was a swimmer on my team who wanted to participate in college sports, I could find a place for you. And it's really, it's a great experience. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much. As Mr. Hamilton was talking about the Eligibility Center, the eligibility.org, there is a guide every year. This is the front page of this year's. I strongly recommend you get your hands on this. It is the guide for the college-bound student athlete. It has all of the information in it on the Eligibility Center, as well as all of the different core requirements that Mr. Hamilton was speaking of. It's really clear and easy to understand. If you Google it, it will come right up. It is also posted on both NashuaNorthAthletics.com as well as NashuaSouthAthletics.com. Really valuable information. So just a few things that I want to show you from here. Again, it talks about the Division I and Division II scholarships, what a national letter of intent is, the differences between the 3 different divisions, as well as time management in terms of those, your initial eligibility, your test scores, etc. So this handbook, this guide, we have some copies in our office, but I didn't want to kill any trees and print out lots of copies for this evening, but it is readily available online, and it has lots of information for you. Few things that people take for granted is, well, I'm going to play in college, I'm only a freshman, or I'm only in middle school. Why do I need to know about this now? One of the most valuable tools, I think, in the guide I was just speaking about is not just the core courses and what courses you need to take, but also what should you be doing each year. Even if you're only a freshman, you should already be registered on the Eligibility Center. You should already take care of that. So I know this is probably pretty small, you can't see everything there, but it does give a high school timeline. What things should you be doing as a freshman? What should you be doing as a sophomore? And then as you progress through the years. So it's really important, use the guides, use your resources, use your school counselors, use your coaches, come see us, your assistant principals, and reach out, okay? At this point in time, I'm going to ask the panelists if you want to take a seat right at the table here. Pete, we're all set with the PowerPoint if you want to go ahead and turn that off. As the panelists are getting settled, just want to let you know they were each asked to sort of prepare something to tell you so that you can get a sense of the division, the difference between the 3 divisions, as well as what's it like at a community college or is it at a junior college. And then Jerry has all of the experience and information that he'll also fill in some gaps as we go. And so at this point, I'm going to turn it over to the panel, whoever wants to get us started. Did we want to draw straws? All right, Mr. Hogan's going to get us started.
All right, so I'm Paul Hogan. I'm from NHTI, Concord's Community College. We are a 2-year school, but we play in a 4-year league nationwide, competing in 11 different athletic events. And we're kind of a stepping stone place for some athletes because they use NHTI as a place to come, earn some credits, maybe expose themselves to the next level. It could be Division 3, 2, or 1 because we've had athletes earn scholarships from NHTI at many different schools in many different sports. We're going to have our first Hall of Fame here in about 2 weeks, and looking at the people who are going into the Hall of Fame, a number of them earn scholarships coming and playing sports at NHTI. So it's a great place to get some experience, have a college experience that's very similar to Division III. We give a little bit of meal money when we travel. Nothing is fancy from the standpoint of, we're not taking jets to games and things like that, but it's good coaching, good facilities, plenty of games, plenty of practices. Our players build up the experience in the classroom, which in many cases, if they've done their duty, then when they go on to a Franklin Pierce or a Rivier, they're going to end up being someone who can contribute and be part of the program, and in some cases, do very, very well. We have, on the women's side, we have great medical programs that are very attractive to some of our female athletes, and many of them play 2 sports, which is quite nice. We've had some that have even played 3. So they'll play softball and basketball or volleyball and softball, whatever it might be, combinations, and that's kind of unique. It can be done on the men's side. It's a little bit harder on the men's side, but it certainly can be there. As far as requirements to get in, it's a matter of getting into the various programs, whether it be engineering, architecture. We're not a tech. We don't offer tech-type programs. We have great computer programs and things like that. So the classes, and I'm sure this will be echoed, because you heard quite a bit about classes that are important to take that will transfer and will be accepted at the next level, whether it be for a scholarship program or for another program. The bottom line is you got to do well at a school like NHTI to move on elsewhere. So C or better. And typically, as I'm a number of students from my sports management class here tonight are with me, and many of them want to be in the on our basketball team, and many of them have aspirations to go on and play elsewhere. And so the message to them is a C doesn't really get you anywhere. You got to get on people's radar with B, B pluses, A minus. You've got to be responsible. You've got to have those daily habits that are going to help make you successful and be internally motivated, because your next time at your next place might be 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years, and coaches are not going to want to fool around with you. They want players that are going to come in and contribute and be helpful and so forth to the athletic program. So that's a little bit about what we do, and I'm going to turn it over to another person here on the panel.
Jeanette McKillop, Franklin Pierce. So my story is pretty unique. I played Division I basketball at the University of San Diego. I coached Division I basketball for about 14 years. I coached NAIA. I've coached Division II, and now I'm a Division II administrator. So I'll speak a little bit about, and I know the differences, but currently at Franklin Pierce, we're a Division II school. We do offer full scholarships for many of our sports. We're in the Northeast 10 Conference, which is one of the premier Division II conferences in the country, along with the PSAC, MIAA, which is in the Midwest. But we're a smaller school, so a small private school, very similar in size to, St. A's and schools like that. I think one of the big things that, the Division II piece pushes, again, from my, past 4 years and experience in it, is life in the balance. So having been a Division I athlete and then having been a Division I coach, in which I did take charter flights many times as an athlete and as a coach, and I definitely choose this level over that personally. Just the fact that our student athletes have the balance of academics. They have enough time in the day to be great academically. They have enough time in the day to perfect their sport, and they also have time to be social. Part of the college is being social, and Division II pushes that, and we also push a lot of community service. So again, you can still be the best at what you do across the board and have enough time to do that. And we've also had numerous Division II athletes come out of Franklin Pierce to go on to play professionally. I'm not talking NBA, but overseas professionally, various countries with soccer, basketballs, women's basketball, men's basketball. So I think that it's a common misnomer that you can't play professionally coming out of, Division II, Division III, and there's certainly numerous opportunities in Europe and around the world to play as well if that's something you decide you want to do. As for the clearinghouse, I would certainly say that it is a big piece to this. I've spent a lot of time this summer having high schools update their core courses that haven't been updated for 20-some years to make sure students are eligible. So for Franklin Pierce Division II, to be a qualifier, you have to have a 2.2 GPA, 16 core courses, which is kind of based on your school and the NCAA, and then it's a sliding scale with your SATs. And full qualifier means you can play, practice, and accept athletic money. If you have below a 2.2, so 2.0 to 2.2, you're considered a partial qualifier. And what that means is you can still receive athletics aid and practice, but you can't compete for a whole year until you have a year in residency. And then anything under that is considered a non-qualifier, so anything below a 2.0, 16 core courses, and varying SAT scores, and you cannot compete, practice, or receive aid. You basically have to sit a year in residence at the college to get yourself eligible to play. So the NCAA clearinghouse is very important, especially from my experience, Division I and Division II, making sure you're aware of the core courses that you're taking, because you may think you're taking courses which clearly you're going to graduate with, but if the NCAA does not recognize those courses, you can be in a tough position coming out and lose aid, lose practice, and lose competition. So it's something to pay attention to. So like Lisa said, I would definitely recommend signing up for the clearinghouse as soon as possible. Getting on there, it's a minimal fee, and getting yourself in there and starting with the process just to make sure you're on track with the core courses and GPA.
I'm Lance Bisson. Thank you for having me. I'm actually a Nashua North alum myself. Way back in 2005, I graduated in the first class of Nashua North. So I'll speak a little bit to my process going through being a student at this school, and then also in the college level, and then becoming a coach. After I graduated from Rivier, playing 4 years, I actually was the freshman basketball coach here at Nashua North, and I got some experience as coaching under my belt, and then became an assistant coach at the college level, and eventually worked my way up to becoming the head coach at Rivier. What Rivier is we're a Division III school that competes in the Great Northeast Athletic Conference, with some schools that you might have heard of, like Suffolk and Johnson and Wales at that level. At the Division III level, we do not offer any athletic money, so everything that you're going to get is warranted through your academic merit. With that being said, about 80% of all Division III athletes receive some academic money that usually averages out to about $17,000, $18,000. So with that being said, the recruiting process looks a whole lot different than what you might see at a Franklin Pierce or at a UNH. Mr. Hamilton touched on it, that you might want to get your name out there, because it's not as an extensive recruiting process that doesn't start until usually about your senior year of high school. It's very helpful for Division III coaches to hear from high school coaches or the high school athletes themselves. And one thing that I would strongly encourage is that through that process, you're truly honest with yourself about what you are as an athlete, and also what you are as a student, and that you try to choose wisely as far as your school on fit, and not necessarily the best school to recruit you or the best team to recruit you. I think that's really important, that athletes don't get caught up in thinking that they have to tell their friends they're getting recruited by a certain school or getting recruited to a certain level, because you might end up at a school that you're not comfortable fit with, and be looking to transfer a year later, and then you're starting the recruiting process all over again. At Rivier, we have a competitive athletic department that competes in 12 varsity sports, and have sent, well, much like Franklin Pierce, a few athletes overseas to play sports professionally, but the focus truly is on student athlete at the Division III level. And that's one thing that at D3 you find is there's not as much of a time commitment when it comes to athletics. The athletes take it just as seriously when they're on the court or on the field competing and practicing, but it's not as much of a time restraint from that sense. We much like NHTI, we don't have any fancy private jets to fly you all around the country, and you're going to get about $10, $15 for every meal that we take you off campus. But the players would all tell you, to a man or a woman when they graduate, that their experience is usually enriched because they're a member of the team. When you get on campus for the first time, no matter what school you're going to, you automatically have 10, 15 friends built in because you're a member of that team. And I think that's something that's really beneficial when you're when you're looking at your overall student experience. Again, another thing in Division III that you find is you're never going to get taken out of a class because you have to go to practice. We as coaches are very understanding. If a player, no matter what sport or team they're on, has an academic commitment, that's always going to come first. And school by school has their own policies. So I can speak to, at Rivier, you're going to be on average in season, maybe with your team, 25 hours a week, which is not a whole lot in the grand scheme of things. And I think we're going to touch on it a little bit as far as your time management. I think that another thing that being on an athletic team can offer is some discipline in that sense. We at Rivier give all of our student athletes daily planners, which now we have an online program which you can use through an app on your phone. But I think it adds a discipline piece to your time management issues that you sometimes run into being a college student. So being on a team can be beneficial in that sense. We at Rivier also have instituted team study halls for every student athlete, and that's another thing that you might not have an opportunity if you're just another non-athlete student at your school, is to have that structure to help you succeed while you're on campus. And those are some of the pieces that being a Division III athlete brings. One that it doesn't bring is any fame. So you'll always hear the term that there's somebody is playing their sport or is a member of that team because of the love of the game. And as a coach, that's really enriching. And I believe most parents would agree. It's something that once you're out into the real world or the hiring force as soon as you graduate college, it's something that's also going to benefit you. So Division III offers opportunities for athletes that might not know they exist. And it's certainly worth the research if it's something that if you're someone that considers yourself as somebody who truly loves the game.
Hi, my name's Jeff Giuliano. I'm the assistant hockey coach at University of New Hampshire, and just going to touch on some stuff at the Division I level for men's ice hockey. And you know, some of these guys up here have spoke about other things for Division III. And so Division I's a little bit different with certain things, so I'll touch on some recruiting stuff and then some of the academic stuff. So just to get started, I think it's so important. I mean, you've heard it all night about having good grades. You know, all you students out there, your parents have been harping on you to do the extra homework or to get that paper done. You need to have good grades, okay? Because if you don't have good grades, you can't play college sports. You won't get into the university, and then if you don't keep those grades up, you'll be ineligible. So, you know, it doesn't matter if you're the best player on the field or on the ice. You need to be able to meet those requirements to play sports. So at the Division I level, we have a 2.3 GPA that you have to maintain, and then you guys have heard about the scale for eligibility with the with taking the test scores and then your GPA, and they figure out you know, if you're eligible or not. So there's a scale for that. And then we've already heard about time management, but I think, you know, I'm going to touch on it again. I think, you know, at UNH, our players, they have to use their time wisely. And a lot of people think being a Division I sport and juggling academics and athletics is difficult. And don't get me wrong, it is difficult, but it's also, there's a lot of structure, and which gives them great balance. And I think with that structure, you know, we have, you know, they have study hall at Rivier. We have study hall as well. We have 4 hours a week. And it's plain and simple. If you don't go to your study hall hours, then you don't play. So at study hall, it's in our academic center. We have an academic advisor for the players. So she's there. She can help them if they need anything, if they need any help. And then also, our players have an academic advisor within their major. So for example, if a player is a finance major, he has an academic advisor within the business school. So, you know, there's a lot of support. and the coaching staff's there as well for our players to do well in the classroom. And so just to touch on, just to follow up with that, I want to touch on the schedule of a player at UNH. So with us, it's 3 core classes per semester to be eligible. So that's 12 credits, so they're 4 credits each. However, we have our players take 4 classes, so 16 credits, because if they're not doing well in a class, that way they're able to drop one if needed. If obviously they're only taking 3, then if they drop one, they'll be ineligible. So we have them take the 4 classes, and at UNH, classes are Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for 50 minutes, or Tuesday, Thursday for 90 minutes. So with our student athletes, they have to take class between 8 and 2 p.m., and then once they're done class, they come to the rink. We have a meeting at 2:30, and then we hit the ice at 3:30 for about an hour, hour and a half. And then Monday and Wednesday, we also work out after, we lift in the gym after we skate. So that's the schedule: Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then we play on Fridays. So they obviously go to class Friday mornings. We play Friday night, and then we play Saturday night, and they have Sunday off. So as you can see, they get 1 day off a week, which isn't too much time, so they need to make sure they're taking, you know, that free time that they do have. They need to be studying and getting their papers done, because as a coach, the last thing you want is your players to be procrastinating, waiting till last minute to study or get a paper done, and then they're staying up till 3 a.m. the night before a game. They're not getting the proper rest, and that's affecting their performance on the ice. So now I'm just going to touch a little bit on recruiting and scholarships at the Division I level. So just to give you a few dates, January 1st going into your sophomore year, or sorry, January 1st of your sophomore year is when we're allowed to have contact with the players. You know, we'll reach out, we'll call, we'll text, and then if I go see a player, I can, you know, pull them aside after the game and talk to them. And then at this time, you're also allowed unofficial visits. So an unofficial visit means the university does not pay for the visit. So we do highly recommend these, though, because you know, as college coaches, we're trying to build our teams around character, and you know, this is a great time to meet the family, meet the player, meet the athlete, and get to know his character. Because if they have great character, then they're going to do the things in the classroom. They're going to do the extra work. They're going to work out. They're going to do the extra skill work, and those are the kids that we want. And so just prior to January 1, though, however, we cannot have any recruiting contact, but you can go on a visit to a school without a coach's permission. So, for example, if your daughter is a freshman, she's a soccer player, and she wants to maybe attend UNH and hopefully get a scholarship there, then you can go set up a tour through admissions, but the coach cannot have any contact with you there. But that way, you get to see the school. And then, yeah, you might like the school or you might not. You can check it off the list. But if you do like it and then they want to offer you something, you know, then you can move forward there. So then now, you know, the sophomore year goes, and then now we're into the summertime. And August 1st of their sophomore summer going into junior year, that's when scholarships can be given out, verbal agreements, and then also official visits. So with official visits, you're allowed 5 official visits to 5 different institutions, only 1 per institution. So if you're getting recruited for 2 different sports, you still only couldn't go on 1 visit. And on those visits, you know, they can't be any longer than 48 hours. And then the school will pay for a player to fly in. He stays with the team, you know, meets the coaches, meets some teachers, and whatnot, meets our strength coach and stuff like that. And then you heard about the NLI. You know, that's just that takes place between November and August, and that's when these verbal agreements become a written binding agreement. And then I just want to touch on the scholarships. You know, a lot of people out there think everyone's on a full scholarship, and that's not the case. At the Division I level, we have 18 scholarships for 28 players. So we have a handful of full scholarships, and a lot of kids are on partial scholarships, you know, a half scholarship or a 3 for 4, stuff like that. And then also at UNH, which it's different than other schools, but some schools offer the academic scholarship. So, you know, at UNH, depending on your GPA and where you are, ranked in your class and your test scores, you can get anywhere from $4,000 to $10,000, which will be added to that the athletic scholarship as well.
So like Lisa mentioned earlier, so my name is Jerry Holland. I've been here for about 32 years. I can't believe it's that long. I remember when Lance played football and basketball here. He was a great athlete. I remember when Jeff was playing hockey and then went up to St. Paul's. So I live in Londonderry, New Hampshire, and I have 4 children. My wife, Michelle, is a physical therapist and athletic trainer as well. My 3 oldest are daughters, and my youngest is Sean. He actually went to school at Nashua South, and we'll talk about that in a second. So I've been very fortunate. My oldest daughter is Caitlin. She's 25 years old. She actually played Division III lacrosse at Keene State. Loved it, but she always wanted to go to UNH, so she ended up matriculating over there. She graduated on the dean's list, and when she was at UNH, she wasn't a Division I player, and she knew that, but she actually played club lacrosse there and had a great experience and really worked out well. She's currently works for NASCAR. She's based out of Daytona, Florida. She travels all over the country, and she does go on some pretty nice corporate jets sometimes. So it's been a great experience for her. So she's our oldest. Our next daughter is our daughter Maeve. She got a full scholarship to the University of Richmond down in Virginia for soccer. They actually wanted her to play lacrosse too because she was an All-American in that. She ended up just playing soccer there. She graduated. She's 23 years old. She lives and works in Washington, D.C., and she'll actually be running the Chicago Marathon next month. Our next daughter is our daughter Brita. She'll be a senior at St. Anselm's, and she's a 2-year captain of the lacrosse team. And she did get she got academic money and athletic money, so she got quite a bit. And then our youngest is Sean. Some of you folks might know him. He's 19 years old. He's just started his sophomore year down at Fordham University in New York City. He was a 3-sport athlete, and I'll get into that in a second. At South, captain of all three of the teams, and he went down, so that's a Division I program, 1AA. In football, it's slightly different. And he went down as preferred walk-on his first year, and because that went well, he got a partial scholarship. And so he's now working towards a full scholarship. That's what he tells me. So we can only hope, but he's doing great. And so I guess that's the reason I'm here is because I've been real fortunate to have kids in all 3 divisions. It's been extremely rewarding watching them play. The biggest thing, all 4 of them played at least 2 sports a year in high school, and Sean played 3. And I think that was super important. It worked on, as these coaches and other folks have talked about, time management. It's been huge. It's all about the grades. And I can talk as a parent. Schools will not bother talking to you if you don't have the grades. Your ability is going to take you to a certain level, Division I, II, or III, but if you have the grades, it's going to open a lot of doors. They talked about the clearinghouse. All our kids started doing that as soon as they could possibly do it. I think playing a sport really helped them out in school. It definitely helped them time management. If you have a 2-hour block to do some homework and you know you have a game later or a practice or whatever, we were very black and white, Michelle and I, when they're growing up. I said, if you don't have good grades, you're not going to play. So we were fortunate. They all were honor roll kids. So I think the best thing to probably do now, if possible, is maybe open it up to some questions to anybody up on the panel. Would that be accurate, Lisa? If there's anything particular, and hopefully we can answer a few questions.
Just want to add, I know there's a lot of information that everybody has given about the different divisions, about the different schools. Not only do we have some of the information posted on our websites, but Nashua ETV is here recording this tonight. So as soon as this presentation, as soon as they have it compiled and edited and things like that, we will also post that. But the Eligibility Center, very important, and the guide to the college-bound student athlete, very important, which has a lot of the information they've been talking about, the core requirements for schools, the sliding scales for your tests, as well as recruiting calendars, which are really important for the different divisions. So are there questions? This is the important part. So I'm going to try to get to everybody with the microphone so everybody can hear. So if you have a question, just raise your hand, we'll get to you.
Hi. As more schools like UNH becomes test optional and SAT scores are not required for college admissions, does that change how the eligibility requirements for Division I, Division II scholarships?
And as questions come up, anybody on the panel, feel free to grab a mic and answer.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that doesn't matter because they'll look at the ACT instead of the SAT score there. So they'll have your GPA and then your ACT score. Does that answer that?
I'll just let you know, he's a school counselor, so he's really interested in this.
So, so my understanding is UNH is now test optional, which means they would not require the SATs or ACTs for admissions into UNH, and several schools are like that. I just didn't know how that affected with sports.
As far as I know, I mean, last year was my first year, and so I don't want to be giving you the wrong information, but as far as I know, they would still, to get the scholarship, you would still need your GPA and your ACT score because we're still doing that, so I would assume that's what needs to be done.
Yeah, I don't think it's not going to change anytime soon. The NCAA is a separate organization from all the schools, and I would bet that the NCAA is going to keep that as part of their qualifying process, at least, for a while, unless most schools start to take that. But I still think the NCAA will use it as a qualifying process.
I'm coming. If you can meet me halfway with the microphone. Sorry. I was figuring I could get it to you faster.
I'm just curious what your advice is for multi-sport athletes in terms of how to decide what sport to kind of particularly pursue or whether they should pursue all the sports. What's your advice?
Well, from a parent standpoint, I think, are you referring to playing in high school and possibly in college, multi-sports in college? Like they indicated earlier, it's very rare to play more than one sport in college. I mean, you do see it occasionally at the Division III level. That's very, very rare, because the time commitment is huge. Like, well, that's a good point. Like, so my middle daughter was an All-American in lacrosse and soccer, and her part of the recruiting tool, she actually was recruited at a lacrosse tournament the summer between her sophomore and junior year by the head coach at the University of Richmond. He never saw her play soccer. He went to a lacrosse tournament right outside of Richmond, saw her play, and offered her a scholarship. Now that's kind of insane, and my wife called me. She goes, "You're not going to believe what happened." Well, she played a lot of club sports as well, and the club sport coach that she played in Massachusetts recommended her to Richmond. Part of the recruiting process for her, now she was a great academic student, and Richmond's a high academic school, so that wasn't going to be that much of a problem for her. But they wanted her so much that they said they would allow her to play lacrosse if she so chose to. And initially she was going to. So I think regarding her, I can only speak for her, and as far as my son Sean, who played multiple sports as well, his best sport was football. I mean, he's a borderline Division I AA football player. If he played lacrosse, probably a Division II player. So then my daughter, who goes to St. A's, she wanted a smaller environment. She actually University of Richmond actually was looking at her for lacrosse, but she didn't want to go at that level. So I think it's each of our kids were kind of slightly different. And I think that's going to be a big, if your son or daughter plays in multiple sports, there's going to be possibly some offers from different schools because of that. And you're going to have to kind of work through what's going to be best for you and your son or daughter and see how that works. It's a good problem to have, quite frankly. I think were good athletes because they played all of them. And there's nothing wrong with not being the best in that chosen sport. Sean played 3 sports in Nashua South. He wasn't a great basketball player, but he's the captain of the team. He was a very good lacrosse player, and he's a very good football player. But I think playing a sport and realize that sometimes you aren't the man or the woman, so to speak, and realizing what it's like and playing with different coaches and different kids, I think that's a great thing. I truly do. So hopefully that helped you out.
Anybody else on the panel want to tackle that one at all? Other questions? I was going to say, we do have some that will have been compiled from some students and some coaches as well.
Coaches, when you think about whether it's a scholarship or an athlete at your level, what do you value, what do you recruit, what do you look for to choose a player or an athlete for your team? Whether it's characteristic or play qualities or anything like who do you want to play for you?
Well, so at UNH, for hockey, you know, we recruit all over the place. I was in Sweden last year. I've been to Europe, and then I was just in Ontario for the weekend. And I think, you know, what we're looking for, and obviously you have to see the play on the ice, and then we meet them as a person. But you know, we want to see how smart they are on the ice, and then obviously if you can skate, because this day and age, if you can't skate, you can't play. That's how hockey is. But then, like I talked about when I was talking about the official visits or unofficial visits, yeah, that's a huge component of it, because we have to make sure the kids have high character, because we don't want to be bringing in kids that don't have high character, and you know, we want to meet the parents and see what kind of parents they have. So the character is a huge component, because if you're the best player out there and then you come to campus, we meet you and your family, and we don't feel that connection, then we're probably not going. We won't offer you a scholarship. So that's just, obviously you need to have it on the field or on the ice, but character is the main thing you need for sure.
So when I did coach, I think high motor, obviously a coach is saying character, but the biggest thing was, I think we're in a time now where you're playing AAU, you're playing travel, and you're trying to distinguish yourself every single time you're out on the field, on the court. And I think it's important to remember that coaches aren't always looking for the most talent. Coaches can see talent. Coaches can spot talent a mile away. They're looking to see those players who are hustling, who are picking somebody up, who are looking their coach in the eye. And I think you'll see that across the board, that those are those intangibles that coaches look for when they're recruiting players.
And I just want to add to it, really at any level, coaches are doing research on athletes. And with social media, it's pretty easy. I have a good friend who immediately becomes friends with anybody that he's going to recruit. He's at a prep school, and he looks at their Facebook page and all of their social media, and sometimes that is a very short visit to that page because of posts, language, various things that are related to that. And if you're not familiar, NCAA schools and most colleges have social media rules to follow, and they're very, very strict about it. So once again, we've heard everybody on the panel talk about character, and it really is important. So you got to pay attention to all those things that could come back to haunt you, and if you're not paying attention to it, maybe now is a good time to take a look at what is getting posted and so forth, because it does represent you, it represents your family, and if someone's going to give you money or want to be associated with you, then that is could be very vital to what you do.
Ms. McKillop, you mentioned AAU and travel teams. Can students still be recruited? Do college coaches still look at students in high school? Or do they have to play those elite travel teams? And that question's for everybody, but you just happen to bring up the topic.
Coaches will find you. I truly believe that coaches, if they're doing their job to the best of their ability, and you're the type of player they're looking for, they're going to find you. But it does help. I mean, travel ball helps because coaches can go out all summer and, you know, watch you play in different areas. So it definitely helps, but I'm just a firm believer of if you're a player that coach is looking for, they're going to find you. If you're a talented, you know, high character player, they'll find you.
I'll speak towards the Division III piece where AAU is important, obviously, but to reiterate that sentiment, if you have talent, we'll find you. And Division III, high school basketball, winter sports, and spring sports does matter as much as your club play does, because we can't be as selective with the amount of scholarship or money allocated. So we are looking to see how you operate in your natural environment, and that's with your peers that you go to school with and the people that are in your gym as your game's going on. So we care about what you're doing on the court, but also how you interact with everybody in your high school. So we do still pay attention to your high school games and not just club or AU.
Great, thank you. College coaches and programs often send out mass mailings. How or when does a student athlete know when he or she is being seriously considered? Sometimes we get a big stack for like our whole track team. Everybody's being recruited all of a sudden.
Well,
How do the kids know the difference?
From a parent standpoint, when the head coach called, when they called for my daughter Maeve, and the same thing with Breeder, and even the one down at Fordham University, that's when it got kind of real. Not that the other stuff isn't great, but at least from a parent standpoint, maybe the rest of the coaches can speak from that, but I know when the head coach called, that kind of made things kind of go in motion.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think a text message or a call is when things are real serious. Sometimes emails will be sent out, you know, just to see if people are interested that aren't, you know, that might not be on the map. And to piggyback off the last question too, it's, you know, the AAU stuff, you know, for hockey we don't have that, but we have all these fall tournament showcase teams where every college is there. So I think it helps to be on those teams. However, for example, I was just up in Ontario at a showcase, and we won't offer a scholarship out of there, but I come home with, you know, X amount of guys that we start to target, and then we will follow them and watch them for their regular teams during the year, because these fall teams or AAU teams that kids are on, it's not their real team or not their school team. So, you know, there could be a kid that looks great because he's playing with really good players, and then there could be a kid that doesn't look that good who's really good, but he's playing with two kids that he's not used to playing with. There's no chemistry. So, you know, we still need to do our due diligence and watch them during the year as well.
I think it's also okay for you guys to reach out to coaches. It's a great thing. Like we said, just be honest and present yourself well, but put yourself out there, because coaches don't have a chance to see or know everybody. Another thing along the lines of character and a little trick, and it's not just about being recruited or recruiting, but one thing, I guess today in life, in our electronic world, if you go on a visit or if you meet somebody, one great way to represent yourself really well, send a handwritten thank you card through the mail to a coach, and oh boy, that meant so much to me as a coach. I got one or two, I think, in the digital age, and that person just name kind of stood out. So that's a kind of a neat little way to distinguish yourself. Coaches, help me out. It's been a while. How do you define a walk-on versus a recruit?
Well, so at UNH we do not have any open tryouts or anything. So a walk-on is a recruited walk-on, and you have the opportunity to earn money, you know, year 2, 3, or 4. So if you come in and you perform, then there's money always available. And so, you know, with 18 full scholarships and 28 kids on the roster, we need walk-ons that can play. I mean, we had 5 walk-ons last year that played regular shifts for us. So, you know, at UNH we have recruited walk-ons, and then you always have the opportunity to earn money.
Thank you.
Well, at the Division III level, it's a little bit different than 1 or 2 in the sense where there's a distinct line between scholarship athlete who's getting the money and those who are walk-ons because they're not on scholarship. But at Division III, we recruit, I'd say about in basketball, 80% of our roster, and then we will stay in contact with that 20% to sort of fill out the roster. So we don't call those walk-ons, but we have recruited players and then the players that will fill out the rest of the roster.
Can you discuss, and Jerry, I know you have personal experience with this, can you discuss if a student is on scholarship and is injured? What happens to their scholarship? What happens to their future athletically?
So when my daughter went to Richmond, she had a pretty injury-free high school career in all the sports she played. She played four, soccer, basketball, lacrosse, and she did track as well. Her sophomore year, so then she gets a full scholarship. And so I was the first one in my family to go to college. My parents from Ireland, so someone paying for college, this was something new to me. So when the coach offered her, and I said, so let me get this straight. She has a full scholarship. She goes, she just needs to bring her toothbrush, Mr. Holland. And that was pretty much it. I mean, I know it sounds crazy, but that was it. They supplied everything. I mean, everything. She had more swag, Division I, it's unbelievable. But unfortunately, so her sophomore year, they traveled by plane. They went to Santa Barbara, preseason. They had a tournament. And they stayed at these beautiful places, and unfortunately, she got hurt. She tore a ligament in her knee. She ended up having surgery. Her scholarship was full throughout, all the way through her senior year in college. She maintained her grades. She was a good student. But that never wavered. Now, I can only speak for that school. I don't know what it's like at other schools. I like to think they would honor that agreement. But that's one of the things that I asked. I said, what if she gets hurt? Because at the Division I level, and Jeff can speak to this, not only as a coach, but he played there, it is a full-time job. My daughter Maeve and Sean now down in New York, that's a full-time job. Soccer is a fall sport. So she would leave usually the last week of July. Sean did the same thing this year, so for training camp. We won't see him. He might have a bye one of the weeks, but we won't see him till probably Christmas as far as coming home. And I'm sure it's the same thing with the other sports as far as the Division I level. Our daughter who plays Division II up at St. A's, that's still a big commitment as well. Not as long, but pretty much. But as far as the injury thing is concerned, they fully take care of them. One thing about that, Lisa, that's good that you brought up. So at the high school level, God forbid your son or daughter gets hurt, I'm going to call you, or Allie or Erin's going to call you and let you know what's going on and whatnot. When your son or daughter gets to the next level, and they're getting recruited, you're going to talk to the coach, especially if your son or daughter is a very good player. But once they sign on the dotted line, they move off to school, they're an adult, and they don't have to tell you anything. And I'm not trying to be mean or flip by that, but they're an adult. So when it comes to, you're not going to have a friendly chat with the coach and ask, well, how come Susie or Johnny's not getting playing time? That won't happen. It just won't happen from a medical standpoint. So I'm used to dealing with all that. I mean, I've been fortunate because I've known some of the medical people at some of the colleges where my kids go to. But technically, they don't have to tell me anything. So that's something different as a parent to get used to. You're not going to pick up the phone and call. I know Coach Scott Knight, whose son Trevor had a great career at UNH. He said the head coach there, Coach Mack, used to say, every parent has one phone call in 5 years, just one. That's his rule. I don't know what other rules. Maybe Jeff could speak to that a little bit. But as far as the injury thing, they took great care of my daughter, and hopefully it never would happen if your son or daughter goes, but I was fortunate. They took great care of her.
Yeah, it's the same thing at UNH too. It's, at the Division I level, if you have a full scholarship, that's honored. If you're not living up to the performance or you get injured, the only way that can get taken away is if you become ineligible and you get kicked out of school for something else. But other than that, it's honored for the 4 years.
I have, you're talking a lot about, sophomores and juniors and things like that. I have an athlete who didn't really want to play college until she's a senior. She wants to play Division II or Division III. Is it too late for her to really get on a team, because she really hasn't tried before this to actually get to any college coaches or anything.
I don't think it's ever too late. I would definitely recommend, getting on the team. Has she played this sport before, or he or she played this sport before and then decided?
Yeah, she's played since she was in about 6th grade. She does her travel team with club and everything else. She's good.
Okay. Yeah, I would definitely recommend. And then the next step would be, because a lot of coaches, I know I'm speaking for basketball, but a lot of the recruiting is done in the summers, kind of going into sophomore, going into junior year. So that is a big time. However, again, it's always reach out to a coach. Send an email, reach out. I would recommend when reaching out, though, don't send highlights. Send full games. I would think all coaches here would say, anybody can look good in highlights. That coaches kind of want to see a full game and see how you interact with teammates and so forth. But I would, I don't think it's ever too late.
Just think, too, that it's very good to be looking ahead at the college experience and thinking about fit. So the earlier you start with going and doing college visitations, too, sophomore, junior year, in the summertime is a nice time to go and visit campuses, see what they look like, see what it feels like. Because ultimately, you could get hurt, then do you still like the school? And you want to like the school. The schools should have what the student athlete wants to study as well. My nephew was a very good soccer player, and we started him when he was a sophomore, of going and visiting college campuses and in the summertime, and he narrowed his choice down, and then he was able to concentrate on playing and having a fun senior year as well. So, and it's good to get to know the coaches and as well, see what they're about, see if that's a fit.
I had a question on the official meetings and about if it's per division or if it's like per athlete. So if I wanted to go visit like 5 different Division I and then like 5 different Division II, or if it's only allowed 5 schools per like an athlete.
Did he stump you?
I am not positive, but I do think that you are allowed just 5 over. I believe it's just overall, but I'm not positive. I do know that there are definitely exceptions. Maybe you graduate and you go to a prep school and you visited one school before you graduate, or maybe you took a gap year, which is a year off after you graduate. You are allowed then to take a second official visit, after that year. But I don't know that's a good one to look up on the clearinghouse. One back here.
Quick question on, you mentioned game films and sending a whole film. My inbox gets inundated with firms or companies that, promise that they're going to put together a highlight reel for you and send it all over the country and, pay $2,000 for this and we'll guarantee we're going to get you a spot in a D1 school. How much of that is true? I guess not a whole lot of it, but in terms of what you guys look at, are you looking for game films and how much of it are you looking for and when are you looking for it? We've got people out there in 7th and 8th grade that are putting together hours of film. I'm sure you guys aren't looking at that. So when's the right time and how much?
I think sending the full game is definitely what you want to do. Maybe you can point out times where they score or wherever they're doing, hitting a basket or scoring a goal, whatever it may be, but definitely send the whole thing or the entire game. And, hockey, I don't know, I can't speak for other sports, but hockey, it's big with the family advisors now who are agents. And it's similar to the people that are probably reaching out to you saying we can put all this highlight stuff together and they're charging you $2,000 or $3,000 or whatever it is. And like we've said up here, if you're good enough, you're going to get seen. You don't need those people. I just think you need to try and play where the scouts are going to be. You know, it's pretty well known now where all the colleges are, what tournaments, showcases. So I think you want to try and get on a team that's there, because, you know, when I go, agents do reach out to me, family advisors. They reach out to me, and I do have their kids' names in my head, but if I'm watching their kids and then Johnny's out there flying around, he's the best player on the ice, then now I'm going after Johnny. So that's how that works. So I think you don't need to have those people that are going to be charging you money. Yeah, I mean, if you're good enough, you're going to get seen. Just try and get in those environments where the scouts are.
As a parent, we never subscribe to any of those services. Certain teams, I know in football, it was a little easier. They use an internet-based thing called Huddle. I think it's used in other sports as well, but it's definitely used there, where coaches can just log on and get all the information. So it made it extremely easy, because when Sean was down at Bentley and the Holy Cross and at Fordham, they could pull it all up. And so they could see the whole game, every play, every want, do whatever they want. I'm pretty sure Huddle is used in other sports as well, but you know, he went to a couple of different college showcases, for lack of a better word. You know, Harvard, Yale, Brown, Bentley had a big one. That's where a lot of kids are there, and as Jeff mentioned, a lot of coaches are there. Again, that's just for football, but lacrosse is very similar, basketball and so on. But we never spent any of that, from what you're referring to, any of those services. No disrespect if there's anybody here working for them, but we never did it.
I think it's very dependent on the sport. I know for golfs and tennis, a lot of the colleges I've been at, universities, their coaches utilize those resources because they can watch how you swing in golf or, you know, tennis-wise, and they don't have to watch a full game, whereas I think it's a little different for team sports. I know for me, I only recruited athletes that I've gotten from an agent have been international students. So all my American, you know, students have been just through AAU, high school, you know, coaches talk. You know, you have relationships with travel coaches and high school coaches. And so I would just say it just depends on the sport.
I guess this is a question more for Lisa too. Do the colleges ever reach out to the athletic directors or the high school coaches to get the background of what their kids are like and kind of understand them, as opposed to just what you see on film, like their personality and stuff like that, coachability?
You guys want to take that first?
We do not reach out to athletic directors. I mean, we talk to the coaches, and then obviously, like I've said, bringing the player and their family, and that's how we do it. I mean, if it so happens that I'm friends with the athletic director, I'll reach out to him as well. But I think the coach, you know, the coach knows what kind of character he has in the dressing room, on the ice, off the ice, that type of thing. So that's who we reach out to.
I'll say that I have never coached a player that I haven't talked to either their high school coach or their AAU coach first. It's very important to talk to the adults around the athlete. With that being said, very rarely do you hear negative work ethic comments or something like that coming from a coach. Most of the players on any college team are usually the best player on their high school team. But we do not necessarily reach out to athletic directors. Once in a while, it will be a guidance counselor that can be helpful in that sense as well, but at least a coach.
One thing I will add to that is we have had scouts come in and recruiters come in, and coaches, correct me if this is incorrect, but they will watch what happens prior to the game, and they will watch what happens after the game, just as much as they're watching how well your child is performing during the game. You know, is that student telling everybody to go pick up the equipment as opposed to being the one that's going and helping with the equipment and the water jugs and things like that? How is that student treating their teammates, treating their coaches, things like that? So a lot of times they'll look for those things as well.
So if it's cross country or like track and field, how would you highlight that? Would you try to film like the beginning of a race or the end of a race? We're not really sure. what sport or what avenue they want to go down?
So I would say times. So I've had a chance to be the administrator for our track teams over the past 2 years and just get to know them. And from what I hear from the coaches, they look for times. They will go out and watch athletes, but the times are what get the coaches interested. And there is a website that usually keeps, I know definitely university and college times for certain events, but also high school times. I don't exactly know the name, but I know that's a good start to, or if your son or daughter is a thrower, they're looking for distances and those type of statistics.
And cross-country would probably be the time, like a time thing as well.
Yes, times for cross country. And the website that I believe your reference is directathletics.com. So any time that you run in a varsity event in the state of New Hampshire, it's on there.
I have a question for Jen and Lance. In relation to the NE10 or the division that Rivier is in, is it published anywhere how many scholarships each team puts out? Like on average, if there's 35 baseball players.
It's not published, but usually a coach will be honest with the amount of scholarships or that they're usually be honest with the number of scholarships they're offering or what they're looking for within that given year or the next year. What you can find is like in Division I, we're talking about the full amount of scholarships. Like Division I women's basketball, it's 15 fulls, whereas in Division II women's basketball, D2 can't go above 10 fulls. So that is published. I believe it's on the NCAA website. So it's just a little bit less as far as the full scholarships go. That should be published for all the sports. But coaches should be honest. From my dealings, would be honest and say, hey, we're looking, we're recruiting, but we're really looking for a catcher or a pitcher or, sometimes the kids that they're recruiting and they have kind of in their head set, recruiting always changes as a coach. You kind of come in and you think you're going this direction, and it always has a way of not going in the exact direction you thought you were going in. So I would never be discouraged by that.
Okay, so it's more different. Franklin Pierce could be different than SNU or St. A's or in relation to each
Yeah,
sport.
certainly. They can't go over, again, I'm just using women's basketball, but they can't go over the 10 full scholarships. However, each athletic department chooses how they want to fund their sports. So certain sports may be funded a little bit higher than other sports, but, it bases out. It's equitable across the board for men's and women's.
And Lance, for the academic stuff for you guys, is it the same across the teams in your conference? It's kind of on a school-by-school basis?
It is a school-by-school basis. And then the one thing I'd be wary of is to understand whether or not that university or college is public or private, because of the way that FAFSA and federal funding is allocated. State schools have hard numbers, whereas we're a little bit more flexible at Rivier, being a private institution. We set a merit scale and we stick to it. And that, again, that has nothing to do with athletics, but it's based on a school-to-school basis.
Another question over here.
Hi, I was wondering, for my daughter who plays a spring sport, she did a college showcase team, and the day that the college recruit came, it wasn't her best game. So she's contacted the coach. I don't have a video of a whole game for her. Do colleges sometimes have something in the wintertime? They can go down to the college and not a tryout, but maybe a camp, or what would be like another suggestion to get some, vision from the coach? Senior.
So
she's a senior, and it's a spring sport.
I think a lot of sports hold elite camps too. They can hold elite camps throughout the year, which are basically juniors or seniors coming in, and it's almost like a tryout, just an opportunity to showcase. I know I've seen it across the board with winter, fall, and spring sports. And, depending, some coaches will hold open tryouts, some coaches won't. Some coaches will allow, if you have somebody who's asking to come try out, will allow them to come to campus and, have a tryout. I know there's specific rules in Division I, Division II, but a lot of times a coach will at least offer the tryout.
And is there anything in particular you have to do before that? Like any type of, a special sign up, or if it's like a camp, a tryout, you could, connect with a coach?
It would just be dependent on when you contact the coach. Yeah, you have to fill out certain paperwork, but I think what you'll find is if you look on the website, a lot of, like I know our lacrosse team has a fall elite camp, and they'll have an early spring elite camp before. So I think it just is dependent on the sport and the timing, but you just have to kind of check it out or reach out to the head coach and ask.
One suggestion I might make is if you're really interested in that school, apply. And usually admissions programs will reach out to all coaches and say, we have a prospective women's lacrosse player who's in our application process as we speak. And then that's one way that you could get on the coach's radar.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Dennis, did you have any other questions? Panel, if you have any final thoughts for the students, the parents. Oops, sorry, question way up in the back. Sorry, I didn't see you over here. You're welcome.
Hi, I'm asking as a guidance counselor. It's not common, but it's not also uncommon for me to hear that a student got a verbal commitment as an 8th grader in hockey, or especially girls hockey, but I've also had a couple boys. How seriously can I take that when I hear what the rules are?
Well, so that rule just changed, I want to say May 31st. And it used to be, there was no rule. So, I mean, Northeastern, BC, BU, they have, they came out probably mid-May saying that this rule is going to go into effect in 2 weeks, and a couple, 14-year-olds committed last minute, 13 and 14. And someone tweeted, some guy tweeted that, so put it in perspective, these kids that just committed would have been in the Little League World Series last year. So that kind of was like, wow. So that can't happen anymore. They can't have any contact with players now until, like I said, sophomore year, January 1st. So those kids that have committed, they technically can't talk to that college coach until they're actually a sophomore.
So I know you were talking about like academics and the sports, but everybody's kind of thinking about the sports scholarships, but what's the likelihood you have all these people sitting here that their student, say they're a good student, they're a pretty good athlete, likelihood they're really going to get like an athletic scholarship or a recruit, like the odds, what do you think most people?
If I knew that answer, I'd be in Vegas right now.
No, I know, but I'm just saying, like, you're putting all your I don't want to say all your ducks in, like, that athletic scholarship, but is it more likely you're going to get more on the academic side versus the athletic side, do you think? You're talking about, like, the character and all that encompasses.
Well, with our kids, we stress academics from Jump Street because God forbid you get hurt.
Right.
They'll never take your degree away. So, and it's certain kids are going to have some God-given talent. I have 4 kids. They're not all the same. I mean, they're very athletic, but some are better than others. I mean, it's just the way it is. So we never went in thinking, oh, you're going to get an athletic scholarship. You're going to get an academic. We never thought that way. I think we just take care of business, take care of school, do what you're supposed to do, and that other stuff kind of takes care of itself. Not to oversimplify it, but that's kind of what we did.
I think you can look on the NCAA website and find out the percentages and the exact data of how many kids get a Division I scholarship and down through the line. I think the big thing to remember is there are so many options. There's so many opportunities. Beyond the NCAA, there's NAIA. I mean, there's so many different opportunities for, again, we talked a lot about the right fit. And like we're saying, then everything kind of takes care of itself. And it's not to say that somewhere down the line, maybe you walk on and then maybe you get a little bit of money, but just the right fit and the experience and, everything that athletics affords with time management, discipline, camaraderie, teamwork, goes along with that.
Kind of along those lines, there's, as she just stated, all of the other different conferences. We probably could have spent 2 hours just talking about the differences in all of the different conferences and their conferences within the conferences across the country. We've focused on the NCAA as well as the community college level, but as was said, the NAIA, there's a junior college conference, there's Christian college conferences, so there's a lot of different conferences. This isn't everything. We just wanted to be able to provide some sort of information. Both the Eligibility Center as well as that guide for the college-bound student athlete, that also has some of the data that you were asking about, and it's plentiful out there through at least those two places, and then there's links to all kinds of others. So, sorry, I think somebody was going to pick up the mic. I interrupted.
Well, actually, Lisa, when you had asked me to do this, I did a little digging on some of the numbers, and I came across, I can't answer that question exactly about how likely it is that you're going to get a scholarship, but just to get a little perspective, about 6% of all high school athletes go on to play at some level of the NCAA. Now you have to encounter Division III where there's 0 scholarships, so that number's only going to go down. But about 6% of high school athletes play in the NCAA.
Great, good data. Any other questions from the audience? Okay, so junior son, they're a little late to the game, just have registered on the Eligibility Center. What would be your recommendations on what they could do, or should he just stop dreaming? Did that summarize your question? And any advice? What can he do fall of his junior year to still be able to move forward and play in college?
We should definitely start visiting schools that are the right fit. You should start narrowing down, have him start narrowing down schools that would be within his wheelhouse, academically, athletically, size-wise. I mean, there's a million different ways that you can narrow down schools, but I would start with that because I do really feel like it's important, like we've said, to find a school based on fit, not based on athletics. You need to be happy with the place you're at, even if there were no athletics. But I would just start narrowing down and then maybe start visiting, that way, maybe contacting a couple of the coaches for the various sports that way.
All right, we had one more back here in the corner.
Yes, hi. My question is more sort of from the parental side. In my situation, my son's a baseball player, and I've coached him the majority of his life. He's now a freshman in high school, and I even had the opportunity to coach him even on his middle school team. And we've been successful in AAU and middle school, and I've developed as a coach as well. My question is how to navigate sort of the interaction with the high school coach and then eventually with the college coach. I've taken an approach of kind of letting him, interact with the coaches and make teams and things like that. But if I have questions, if I have concerns, I've been unsure as to how to approach that with the coaches. Any advice on how to do that? And especially because, I'm coaching at similar level, it's hard for me sometimes to, make sure that it's done appropriately and within, what's acceptable for where he's at.
I think if your son is, especially if he's a high school athlete, strongly encourage him to make the contact with the coach. Having a parent supersede, speak for their son or daughter, that's a red flag for a coach. You just don't do that because, especially in the high school level, and they're getting close to being an adult, and they need to speak for themselves, and that's super important. It might be awkward, might be a little uncomfortable, but that's okay, because the next time they speak, they'll do better at it. So if there's a question, concern, anything like that, I would definitely encourage your son to make the contact, absolutely. And listen, if something is happening that's uncomfortable or whatever, God forbid there's something going on, that's where you get in, and that's where you make a contact. That's where you would talk to the athletic director, but that's very rare. You don't want to supersede that. You want to have your son or daughter, whatever, make that contact first, because the coach will appreciate that. I never, ever spoke on behalf of my kids before they did. No way. It just wasn't going to happen. They had to do it.
All right, I think the biggest thing we have heard from all of the panelists this evening is find the school first. Don't find the athletic program, find the school first, the one that has your major, the one that is a good fit size-wise, community-wise, culture-wise. I think that's probably the biggest message that we heard from all 5 of our panelists this evening. So how about a big round of applause for all 5? Thank you all very much for being here, and thank you all very much for being here.